Actually, Marcus said, reaching slowly into a pouch at his belt, I was tracking the Vrexian raiding party. They've been hitting too many outposts, too systematically. Something doesn't add up. Battlefield coagulant, he explained, showing it to her. Works on Carthian physiology. Stole a case from a Vrexian supply depot 3 days ago. They shouldn't have had it. Ilara's mind, despite her fading consciousness, caught the implication. Vrexians with Carthian-specific medical supplies. Planned in advance. Why? Help me? She asked, her strength ebbing. Marcus moved closer, carefully pressing the injector against her exposed blue skin where the armor had been blasted away. Because I'm tracking something bigger than border skirmishes, he said, his voice hardening. Because I need answers. And because. He hesitated, then finished simply. Humans help their allies. The injector hissed as it dispensed its contents into her wound. Almost immediately, the bleeding slowed. The Carthians are not human allies, she managed to say, though diplomatic niceties seemed absurd in their current situation. Maybe not officially, Marcus conceded. But I've always been bad at following official policy. The medication was working quickly, clearing Ilara's mind even as it sealed her wound. With clarity came the full weight of her shame. She should have died here. What right did she have to survive when those under her protection had perished? As if reading her thoughts, Marcus said, those raiders weren't just killing or taking captives. They were looking for something specific. They spent too much time in the research building. Ilara's antennae twitched involuntarily, a Carthian expression of surprise that her translator couldn't convey. The research building had housed the prototype planetary shield technology her people had been developing. If the Vrexians had taken that. I need to report this, she said, trying to push herself upright. To the leaders who stationed one guardian at a vital research outpost. Marcus's tone was skeptical. Who left you so undermanned that this massacre was inevitable? Something's wrong with this picture, Commander. Ilara wanted to deny it, to defend her superiors, but doubt had already taken root. The outpost had been too lightly defended for its importance. Her requests for reinforcements had been repeatedly denied. Help me up, she said instead. Marcus hesitated, then offered his hand. Ilara stared at the 5-fingered appendage for a long moment before grasping it with her 4-fingered one. With his support, she managed to stand, swaying slightly. You should rest, he advised. That coagulant will hold the wound, but you've lost blood. I cannot rest, Ilara replied, her dual-tone voice firm, despite her weakness. I must find those taken. I must understand why this happened. Marcus studied her, seeming to evaluate her determination against her physical state. Finally, he nodded. My grabbike can carry 2, he said. I'm following the Vrexian trail. They're headed west, toward the borderlands. If you want answers, that's where we'll find them. Ilara glanced back at the ruins of Outpost Vega. Her duty was to report to her superiors, to face judgment for her failure. But if Marcus was right, if something larger was at play, then her true duty might lie elsewhere. There is an Earth outpost 3 days' journey west, she said slowly. Fort Hope. I have never been there, but I know. I know it well, Marcus replied, something unreadable flashing across his face. It's as good a place as any to start looking for answers. He turned and began walking toward his grabbike, pausing when he realized she wasn't following. Commander, he called back, we should move before dark. Wasteland predators will be drawn to. He trailed off, gesturing at the bodies partially buried in the rubble. Ilara knew he was right. Night on Carthus Prime brought out hunting packs of native fauna that even well-armed soldiers avoided. Still, she hesitated. Why risk yourself for me? She asked. What do you gain? Marcus's weathered face softened slightly. Not all decisions are about gain, Commander. Sometimes they're about doing what needs to be done. He extended his hand again. Now, are you coming? Or would you rather wait here for death? The choice hung in the air between them. Death would be honorable, expected, but it would answer nothing. It would not help those taken or prevent this from happening again. Ilara stepped forward, painful step after painful step, until she reached Marcus's side. "I will come," she said. "But understand this, human. When I find those responsible, there will be justice. Carthian justice." Marcus nodded, a grim smile touching his lips. "I'm counting on it, Commander." As the grab bike roared to life beneath them, Ilara cast one last look at the smoking ruins of her failure. She would return with answers, with the captives if possible, or with vengeance if not. The Last Guardian. The red sun of Carthus Prime cast long shadows across the rubble that had once been Outpost Vega. Commander Ilara Solis knelt among the debris, her crystalline blue blood seeping from a wound in her side, where enemy fire had found a gap in her armor. Her four-fingered hand pressed against it, trying to stem the flow while her other hand gripped her pulse rifle with waning strength. 20 hours ago, the outpost had been home to 37 Carthian settlers, scientists, farmers, and their families. Now they were all dead or taken, and she, their appointed guardian, had failed them utterly. The Vrexian raiders had struck without warning. Their jamming technology had silenced the outpost's communication systems before the first shot was fired. By the time Ilara had mobilized the defense drones, the enemy fighters were already inside the perimeter shields. She had fought. By the Great Void, how she had fought. But one soldier against a raiding party of 20 was nothing more than a delay, not a defense. She had killed 7 of them before taking the blast to her side. After that, the best she could do was hide and watch as they slaughtered those who resisted and rounded up the rest. Watch as they looted the research facility that had been the outpost's purpose. Watch as her failure was completed in blood and fire. Now, hours later, the enemy was gone with their captives and plunder. All that remained was smoke, ruins, and Ilara, abandoned to die with her disgrace. "I failed," she whispered to the empty air, her dual voice organs creating the distinctive harmonic tones of her people. "My honor is ash." In Carthian society, such failure demanded ritual suicide. A guardian who could not protect had no right to live. Ilara knew this. The ceremonial dagger was still strapped to her thigh. But something kept her from reaching for it. Perhaps the same stubborn instinct that had kept her alive through the night despite her wound. The approaching whine of a grab bike broke the stillness. Ilara stiffened, raising her rifle despite the agony that tore through her side. Vrexians returning to check for survivors, or scavengers, drawn by the smoke visible for kilometers across the wastelands. She dragged herself behind a collapsed wall, wincing as her armor scraped against broken concrete. Her vision swam with the effort, black spots dancing at the edges. The loss of blood was taking its toll. The grab bike's engine cut off somewhere nearby. Then footsteps, careful, measured, moving through the rubble. Not Vrexian steps. They walked differently with their reverse-jointed legs. This was something else. A shadow fell across her hiding place. Ilara raised her rifle, ready to sell her life dearly, when a voice spoke, not in Carthian or Vrexian, but in the human trade language. "Easy there, Blue. You look like you've had enough fighting for one day." The figure that stepped into view was unmistakably human. Bipedal, with tan skin weathered by sun and wind, dark hair pulled back in a utilitarian tail. He wore a scavenged environmental suit patched in a dozen places, and what appeared to be modified Earth Defense Force armor plates strapped over it. A plasma cutter hung at his hip, a tool, not a military weapon. But the rifle slung across his back was definitely built for combat. Human, Ilara managed, her translator implant converting her harmonics to human speech. "This is Carthian territory." The man's eyebrows rose. "Not anymore, by the looks of it." He gestured around at the destruction. "Vrexians." Ilara tried to nod, but the movement sent fresh waves of pain through her. The rifle grew impossibly heavy in her hands. "They hit an outpost 50 clicks east last week." The human continued conversationally, as if they were discussing the weather and not surrounded by a massacre site. Rumor says they're pushing the border for some reason, getting bolder. Why was he telling her this? Was he working with the Phyrexians? A spy? A scavenger looking to finish what they started? The rifle slipped from her weakening grip, clattering to the ground. The human made no move toward his own weapon. Instead, he crouched, just out of her reach, and studied her with eyes the color of Carthian moss. "You're the guardian here," he said, noticing the insignia on her armor. "Last one standing. What's your name, soldier?" "Commander Ilara Solis," she answered automatically, military training overriding suspicion. 6th Defense Division, Carthian Expansion Force. "Marcus Reeves," the human replied. "Former Earth Defense Force." "Very former." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Nice to meet you, Commander, though I wish it were under better circumstances." Ilara's vision blurred again. The pain in her side had dulled to a dangerous throb, the kind that preceded unconsciousness and death. "Why are you here, human?" she managed to ask. "To watch me die." The human's voice came over the comm link in her helmet as they accelerated away from the outpost. "You fell today, Commander," he said, the wind almost stealing his words. "But you're not alone anymore. And we both know how to rise again. Unlikely allies." The first sunset on the wastelands of Carthus Prime painted the sky in violent streaks of crimson and gold. The grabbike skimmed over cracked earth and around towering rock formations, following a trail that only Marcus seemed able to see. Ilara clung to the human's environmental suit, her wound throbbing with each bounce and turn. They had been traveling for hours, putting distance between themselves and the ruined outpost. Twice they had detoured around Phyrexian scout patrols, small hover drones that swept the landscape with scanning beams. "They're looking for survivors," Marcus explained during their brief stop in the shadow of a massive arch of stone. "You specifically, I'd wager." Ilara's antennae flattened against her skull, a sign of concern. "They do not usually hunt survivors." "Exactly." Marcus passed her a canteen of water. "Which means you're valuable, or they're afraid you saw something you shouldn't have." The water was lukewarm and had the metallic tang of purification tablets, but to Ilara's parched system, it was life-giving. She drank cautiously, knowing too much would make her ill. "I saw nothing unusual," she said, returning the canteen. "The attack was swift, brutal. Standard Phyrexian tactics, only more precise." "And the research facility? What exactly were they working on there?" Ilara hesitated. The Planetary Shield Project was classified. Sharing its details with a human, especially one whose allegiances were unclear, would be treason. Marcus noted her silence and sighed. "Look, Commander, we're past the point of secrets. I'm risking my neck for you because I think we're chasing the same answers, but I can't help if you keep me in the dark." "Why did you leave the Earth Defense Force?" Ilara countered. Marcus's face hardened. "I asked first." They stared at each other, two soldiers from different worlds, bound by suspicion as much as circumstance. Finally, Ilara relented. "The facility was developing a planetary shield system," she admitted, "one that could protect an entire world from orbital bombardment using minimal energy, a defensive technology." Marcus whistled softly. "That would change the balance of power in this sector, make invasion nearly impossible." "Yes, it would protect Carthian worlds from aggression, and Earth colonies too, if shared." Marcus studied her. "Is that why they took captives?" "To extract information about the technology." Ilara's four-fingered hand clenched. "The research team would never reveal." "Everyone breaks, Commander," Marcus interrupted gently, "given enough time and the right methods, especially if they threaten each other rather than the individual." The thought of her people being tortured twisted something inside Ilara. "Then we must find them quickly." Marcus nodded, checking the sky where the first stars were becoming visible. "We'll reach the foothills by morning. There's a cave system there where we can rest safely during daylight." As they resumed their journey, the temperature dropped rapidly, a feature of the planet's thin atmosphere. Ilara's metabolism, evolved for a warmer world, began to slow. Her armor had thermal regulation, but the power cells had been damaged in the attack. Marcus noticed her shivering. Without comment, he reached back and adjusted something on his environmental suit. Warm air began to flow from vents along his back, creating a pocket of heat between them. "Sharing my suit's thermal output," he explained. "We can't have you freezing to death after I went to all the trouble of stopping your bleeding." The casual kindness caught Ilara off guard. Among her people, such consideration would only be shown to family members or battle-bonded warriors. Yet this human, this stranger, offered it without hesitation. "Thank you," she said stiffly, the words unfamiliar on her tongue. "Don't mention it. Just stay awake and keep an eye out for patrols. I need to focus on the trail." As they traveled through the night, Ilara found herself studying the human. Marcus drove with the confidence of someone intimately familiar with harsh environments. His reactions were quick, his navigation sure. This was not some novice adventurer, but a seasoned veteran of the wastelands. "You know this region well," she observed. Marcus nodded without turning. 3 years out here teaches you the terrain or kills you." 3 years. The human outpost has only been established for 2 years, he finished. "I was here before that. Alone." Ilara processed this. "You are a deserter." His shoulders tensed, but his voice remained even. "I prefer conscientious objector. The Earth Defense Force does not recognize such a distinction. Hence the alone in the wasteland part of my story." There was a bitter humor in his tone. "Why did you desert?" Ilara asked again. This time, Marcus answered, "Because I was ordered to do something unconscionable, and I refused." "What orders?" The grab bike swerved suddenly, avoiding the hidden crevasse in their path. When Marcus spoke again, his voice was tight. "There was a Carthian science vessel, unarmed. We were told it was carrying bioweapons intended for deployment on Earth colonies." He paused. "It wasn't. It was a medical ship, developing treatments for radiation poisoning caused by the Nexus War." Ilara's antennae quivered. The Nexus War had ended 15 years ago, but its effects lingered in devastated ecosystems and lingering radiation across a dozen worlds. "We were ordered to destroy it," Marcus continued. "No warnings, no communication. Just elimination. I was squadron leader." "Did you comply?" Ilara asked quietly. "No. I warned them instead, gave them time to transmit proof of their mission. When my commanding officer realized what I'd done, he tried to take control of my fighter remotely." Marcus's voice grew distant. "I ejected before he could, and set my fighter to self-destruct. The explosion damaged the command ship's weapon systems long enough for the Carthian vessel to escape." Ilara stared at the back of his head, stunned. "You betrayed your own people for justice." "I betrayed corrupt orders to save innocent lives," he corrected. "Afterward, with my identification transponder destroyed in the explosion, I was presumed dead. I decided to stay that way. Stole a shuttle, crashed it here on the frontier, and have been surviving ever since." The story settled between them as the grab bike hummed across the darkened landscape. Ilara tried to reconcile this account with everything she had been taught about humans, that they were aggressive, untrustworthy, putting their species' dominance above all ethical considerations. "Why tell me this?" she finally asked. "Because," Marcus replied, slowing the bike as they approached a narrow pass between towering rock formations, "I think someone is trying to start another war, and I don't think it's our government's doing it. At least, not officially." Before Ilara could respond, a warning light flashed on Marcus's wrist display. "Motion sensors," he muttered. "Something's ahead." He cut the grab bike's engine, letting it settle silently to the ground. In the sudden quiet, Ilara could hear a faint mechanical hum. "Vrexian hover tank," Marcus whispered, reaching for his rifle. "Heavy patrol. We need to go around." Ilara unholstered her own weapon, checking its charge. "How far off our route?" "Too far. We'll lose hours." Marcus hesitated, then made a decision. "There's another way, but you won't like it." Before she could ask what he meant, he was moving, low and fast, toward a narrow crevice in the rock wall. Ilara followed, ignoring the protest from her injured side. The gap was barely wide enough for them to squeeze through, opening into a tunnel that sloped downward. "Underground network," Marcus explained as they descended. "Natural caves expanded by someone, or something, long ago. They run for kilometers under the wastelands." The tunnel was pitch black until Marcus activated a small light on his wrist device. The pale blue glow revealed smooth walls inscribed with unfamiliar patterns. "What made these?" Ilara asked, running her fingers over the strange markings. "No idea. They were here before any of our species arrived. The Vrexians avoid them. Some kind of superstition. We can travel safely underneath their patrol route and emerge beyond their sensor range." As they moved deeper into the tunnel system, the air grew warmer and the strange markings more elaborate. Ilara found herself drawn to them, her scientific curiosity temporarily overshadowing their dangerous situation. "These appear to be mathematical equations," she murmured, studying one particular section. "But using a numerical system I don't recognize." Marcus glanced back at her. "You can understand them." "Not exactly. But there are patterns consistent with advanced physics. My specialization before I joined the military was in theoretical energy systems." A scientist turned soldier. Marcus seemed surprised. "All Carthians serve in the defense forces," Ilara explained. "It is our obligation to protect our people before pursuing personal interests." She didn't add that she had volunteered to extend her service period, driven by a sense of duty that her more academically inclined peers often lacked. They continued in silence for nearly an hour, the tunnel branching occasionally. Marcus navigated the intersections with confidence. "How do you know which way to go?" Ilara finally asked. "I've mapped sections of these tunnels, used them to avoid Vrexian patrols when necessary." He paused at a junction, considering. "Also, there's a subtle airflow if you pay attention. Follow the fresh air, and you'll usually find an exit." As if to validate his claim, a faint breeze touched Ilara's face. Her antennae twitched, sampling the air. There was something else there, a scent her Carthian senses detected that a human might miss. "Marcus," she said quietly, her hand moving to her weapon. "We are not alone." The human froze, then slowly reached for his rifle. "Vrexians." "No, something else. Something old." A grinding sound echoed through the tunnel, like stone moving against stone. Marcus's light revealed nothing in the darkness ahead, but the sound grew louder. "Back," he whispered, reversing direction. "There's another way." They retreated to the previous junction, taking a different branch. The grinding followed them, seeming to come from the very walls now. "What is it?" Ilara asked, her dual voice organs creating an anxious harmonic. "The tunnels have defenses," Marcus replied grimly. "Usually dormant, but sometimes they activate. I don't know what triggers them." The tunnel ahead suddenly sealed itself, a section of wall sliding across their path with impossible smoothness. Behind them, another barrier closed. They were trapped. The floor beneath them began to tilt, slowly at first, then more steeply. There was nothing to grab, the smooth walls offering no purchase. "Brace against me," Marcus shouted, wedging himself against the tilting floor. Ilara pressed her back against his, her boots seeking traction on the increasingly vertical surface. For a moment, they held position. Then the floor gave a violent lurch, and they were falling. They tumbled together down a smooth chute, the blue light spinning wildly around them as they descended into the unknown depths. Ilara's wounds screamed in protest at the rough treatment, but she bit back her cry of pain. The chute deposited them unceremoniously onto a sandy floor in a vast chamber. Marcus's light seemed feeble in the enormous space, barely illuminating their immediate surroundings. "Are you injured?" he asked, helping Ilara to her feet. "No more than I was," she replied, wincing. "Where are we?" Marcus played his light across the chamber. The beam caught reflective surfaces that sent it scattering in 1,000 directions, suddenly illuminating the entire space in a soft blue glow. What Ilara saw took her breath away. The chamber was dome-shaped, easily hundreds of meters across. The walls were covered in the same mathematical symbols, but here they formed intricate patterns that seemed to shift and move as she watched. In the center stood what could only be described as a machine, ancient beyond reckoning, yet somehow intact. "By the void," she whispered. "Do you know what this is?" Marcus shook his head, clearly as awestruck as she was. "I've never been this deep before." Ilara moved toward the machine, drawn by scientific curiosity. It consisted of concentric rings suspended around a core of what appeared to be pure energy, contained, yet visible as a pulsing blue light. "This technology," she said, her voice hushed with reverence, "it's similar to theoretical models in our planetary shield research, but perfected. Whoever built this solved problems our scientists haven't even properly formulated yet." Marcus joined her, keeping a cautious distance from the machine. "Is it a weapon?" "No," Ilara replied confidently. "It's a power source. Clean, self-sustaining energy generation on a scale that could power an entire planet." She turned to him, her eyes wide. "Do you understand what this means? This could end resource wars, eliminate the need for dangerous fuel sources, make the planetary shield project viable." Marcus added, understanding dawning. "Is this what the Phyrexians are really after? Not just your prototype, but this." If they knew it existed. Ilara's voice trailed off as implications cascaded through her mind. But how would they know? This chamber has clearly been sealed for millennia. Marcus's expression darkened. Someone knew. Someone has been feeding them information. He checked his wrist display. "We've lost ours. We need to keep moving." Ilara tore her gaze from the ancient machine. He was right. The captives couldn't wait, and neither could the truth they were pursuing. "There must be an exit," she said, scanning the chamber walls. "The defenses weren't meant to kill, only to protect this place from intruders." They found it eventually, a narrow staircase carved into the rock, leading upward. As they prepared to ascend, Ilara cast one last look at the machine. "We will return," she promised, both to herself and to whoever had created this marvel. "This belongs to all sentient beings, not to those who would use it for domination." The staircase was long and winding, but eventually opened into another tunnel that sloped gently upward. After what felt like hours, they emerged onto the surface, on the far side of the rock formations, well beyond the Phyrexian patrol route. The twin moons of Carthus Prime hung low in the sky, bathing the landscape in silver light. In the distance, the silhouette of mountains was visible against the star-filled horizon. "Fort Hope lies in those foothills," Marcus said, retrieving his grab bike from a hidden cache nearby. He had apparently used this exit before. "We can reach it by morning." As they resumed their journey, Ilara found herself watching the human with new eyes. He had shared his darkest secret with her, risked his life alongside hers, and shown respect for knowledge that many would have feared or sought to weaponize. Perhaps, she thought, the gulf between their species was not as vast as she had been taught to believe. "Marcus," she said as the grab bike carried them toward the mountains. "Thank you." He glanced back briefly, surprise evident in his expression. "For what?" "For reminding me that honor is not found in dying for a cause, but in living for the right one." Marcus was silent for a long moment. Then, so quietly she almost missed it beneath the engine's hum. Maybe we both needed that reminder. The hidden truth. Fort Hope appeared on the horizon as the first rays of dawn broke over the mountains. Unlike the elegant organic architecture of Carthian settlements, the human outpost was utilitarian to the point of ugliness. All straight lines and reinforced walls, designed to withstand both the elements and potential attacks. Ilara studied it through Marcus's field glasses. It seems excessive for a research station. That's because it's not just a research station. Marcus replied, taking back the glasses. Look at the southeastern quadrant. Those are artillery emplacements, camouflaged, but definitely military grade. And those radar domes, far more powerful than needed for weather monitoring. They were concealed on a ridge overlooking the approach to the fort, having left the grav bike hidden in a ravine below. Ilara's wound had begun to trouble her again during the final hours of their journey, the coagulant reaching the limits of its effectiveness. "We need a plan," she said, ignoring the throbbing pain in her side. "I cannot simply walk in." "Neither can I," Marcus admitted. "I'm officially dead, remember? And if what I suspect is happening is real, the people running this operation would be very eager to make that status permanent." The fort's main gate opened, and a supply convoy began rolling out. 3 heavy-duty transport vehicles escorted by armed personnel in light patrol vehicles. "Perfect timing," Marcus murmured, watching the convoy through the glasses. "They're heading to the eastern mining operation. 2-day round trip, minimal security at the checkpoint they'll pass in about 20 minutes. Ilara raised a questioning eyebrow ridge, a gesture she had unconsciously adopted from human expressions. "We'd hitch a ride," Marcus explained. "Bypass the main gate entirely. Those transports are returning empty. We can hide in the cargo hold." It was a risky plan, but Ilara could see no better alternative. She nodded her agreement. They made their way down to the checkpoint, little more than a scanner array mounted beside the road, and waited for the convoy to approach. When it was within sight, Marcus withdrew a small device from his pack. "Localized EMP," he explained. "Will knock out the scanner just long enough for us to cross without being detected." "Where did you get such technology?" Ilara asked, impressed despite herself. Marcus winked. "Let's just say the Vrexians aren't the only ones who've had things stolen from them lately." The convoy slowed as it approached the checkpoint. Marcus activated the EMP device, and the scanner's lights flickered and died. In the momentary confusion, they darted across the road and climbed aboard the last transport, concealing themselves among empty cargo containers. "The scanner will reboot in 30 seconds, Marcus whispered as the convoy resumed its journey. "They'll assume it was a power fluctuation from the sandstorm 3 days ago. Happens all the time out here." The transport rolled through the checkpoint without incident, and soon they were passing through Fort Hope's massive gates. Ilara felt her heartbeat quicken. She was now inside a human military installation, possibly the first Carthian to enter one without being a prisoner of war. They waited until the transport halted in a loading bay, then slipped out during the crew's shift change, using the shadows and Marcus's knowledge of military protocols to avoid detection. "We need to access a terminal," Marcus whispered as they concealed themselves in a maintenance corridor. "Find out where they might be holding Carthian prisoners and what they're doing with your technology." "How do we do that without alerting security?" Marcus considered this, then reached into his pack and removed what appeared to be a human military identification card. "This might work, but it's risky. It's coded to a maintenance worker's profile, low-level access, but enough to get into some systems." "Where did you?" Ilara began, then shook her head. "Never mind. I don't think I want to know." A ghost of a smile crossed Marcus's face. "Probably not." They located a service terminal in a quiet corridor. Marcus inserted the stolen ID, and the screen flickered to life, displaying a menu of basic system functions. "Maintenance logs," he muttered, fingers flying over the interface. "Might give us a clue. Here, 3 days ago, special security protocols implemented in Section D. Sublevel 2. Restricted access, commander's authorization only." He looked at Ilara. 3 days ago. "The same day as the attack on my outpost," she said, the connection obvious. Marcus continued searching. Power allocation increased to laboratory facilities in the same section. "And look, medical supplies requisitioned for special subjects. They're here, Ilara. Your people are here." A cold determination settled over her. "Then we go to Section D." "Not so fast," Marcus cautioned. We need to know what we're walking into. And we need proof of what's happening to take back to our respective authorities. He searched further, pulling up security protocols and facility maps. What they discovered sent a chill through both of them. Section D was a classified research division, officially designated for defensive technology development. But the power consumption and security measures were far beyond what such work would require. They're reverse engineering your planetary shield, Marcus concluded grimly, using your captured scientists. But there's something else. He frowned, studying the set of communications logs. Regular transmissions to a location outside Fort Hope, heavily encrypted. Not going to Earth Command. Vrexians, Ilara suggested. No, the signal pattern is wrong. It's going to. His eyes widened. An Athelian Corporation vessel in orbit. Ilara, do you know what this means? She did. The Athelian Corporation was one of the largest human-owned military contractors, notorious for their aggressive weapons development and ethical flexibility. They operated semi-independently from Earth's government, wielding enough economic power to influence policy without direct oversight. A corporation is orchestrating attacks on Carthian outposts, she said slowly, stealing our technology and conducting illegal research using captives. But why? What do they gain? War profiteering, Marcus replied, his voice hard. If tensions between humans and Carthians escalate to conflict, Athelian stands to make trillions in defense contracts. They're manufacturing a crisis they can exploit. A message flashed across the terminal screen. Security systems initiating a trace on the unauthorized access. They had minutes, perhaps seconds, before their location was discovered. We need to move, Marcus urged, extracting the ID card. Section D, Sublevel 2. We free your people, gather evidence, and get out.